Hi, this is Robert Keane, Director of International Campaigns.
Por la vida en Colombia está lleno de frutos.
Geschlossen und manche dann sagen, ja, es ist nicht mehr so.
People start saying that, if your thoughts fall foul of the popular opinion, that they're somehow criminal.
Mi hija ha decidido no abortar.
Our freedom in a democracy, in our open society, begins with the freedom of speech.
Ante todo, los pilares de 40 días, ¿no? La oración, el ayuno, la yoga.
So sometimes it's just a little thing that we have to do. So
también dignidad, que son creados también por
But
Dios.
beyond what we say, anything we do at 40 Days for Life, anything we say to defend the unborn, we do with love.
Los bebés no tienen que ser abortados de una madre.
40 Days for Life International Podcast.
El podcast de 40 días por la vida internacional.
Hello and welcome to the International Podcast. My name is Robert Keane. I'm the Director of International Campaigns, and welcome to yet another podcast. We are really privileged to have Heather Gardner, who's the lead, the head of advancement, also the 365, that's the year-round prayer vigils in the United States. Heather lives in Texas, which is now largely abortion-free, so we really look forward to hearing how the United States is different following the end of Roe versus Wade. Heather always considers herself pro-life, and she never knew that there were people who prayed outside abortion facilities until she became a student at Texas A&M University. That's the Aggies in College Station, Texas, where 40 Days for Life started. And she was invited to attend a prayer vigil. The vigil was held outside the local abortion facility by what was then the Brazos Valley Coalition for Life in Bryan, Texas, which merged with 40 Days for Life. This is the birthplace of 40 Days for Life, and where the former Planned Parenthood director, Abby Johnson, was director and converted. And so Heather got increasingly involved, eventually served on staff as Director of Communications for the Brazos Valley Coalition for Life, which merged with 40 Days for Life. Later, Heather served as Executive Director of the Central Texas Coalition for Life in Austin, the liberal capital of Texas. And over the last decade, Heather's trained thousands of volunteers locally, nationally, internationally to be sidewalk advocates, like pavement counsellors in the UK, and pregnancy centre client advocates. And in 2019, she had a cameo role in Unplanned, the film about Abby Johnson, based on the book of the same title. So she currently serves as the Director of Advancement for 40 Days for Life, oversees the 365 year-round locations. She spends a lot of time on the sidewalks outside abortion facilities, reaching out to women and men and praying for an end to abortion and striving to build a culture of life. Heather, it's a real privilege to have you with us, and thank you so much for joining the International Podcast.
I'm so glad to be here, Robert. Thank you for the invitation.
It's really great. Well, tell us how you first got involved in the pro-life movement and having this cameo role in Unplanned. And I do believe you had like Molotov cocktails thrown at you at one point. Was that in Austin? I do remember that story about 10 years ago of you got a lot of aggression from pro-aborts, or what exactly happened there?
Actually, the Molotov cocktail situation was 10 years ago, almost to the day. That was in Austin, Texas, where I served as the director for the Central Texas Coalition for Life. That thankfully was a dangerous situation that could have gone worse, but didn't. So we were in the middle of our spring 40 Days for Life vigil. We had noticed a pattern after a while of every Monday. For several weeks, there was something being thrown at the prayer volunteers. So it almost ended up being the same volunteers that it happened to, because it was almost the same time on Monday evenings. And as you know, Robert, and as most of the listeners know that have participated in a 40 Days for Life campaign, that's not terribly unusual for a lot of us to have like a Slurpee, cup or some, water bottle or some object thrown our way. However, it was getting increasingly strange. At one point, this woman who was throwing things ended up stopping and emptying a carton of milk circling around and mumbling, circling around the volunteers and then mumbling and emptying a carton of milk on the ground around them. And then we discovered later, we realized later after, especially after talking with somebody who was formerly practicing Wiccan, that that was some sort of witchcraft type of, activity that she was doing. So it escalated, unfortunately, to the point where she felt the need to make a Molotov cocktail. So she just got a glass bottle with a paper towel or something and had some flammable liquid inside of it, lit it on fire, and threw it out her window as she was driving by on this very busy road. There were three women there. And they noticed this, and thankfully, one of them saw the flame and she stamped out the flame on the ground before it could go all the way to the liquid and explode and hurt somebody. So thankfully, it was put out and it didn't have the damage that the woman was hoping for. It just so happened that one of our prayer volunteers had just left her shift right before that and was the car behind her car when she did this. So she was able to see where the woman drove off to and called the police, and the police did catch up with her and she went to jail for that. We found out later that this woman was very mentally disturbed and that she had also, she's very pro abortion. She was an emergency room nurse and that she had testified in our state capitol a few times before on behalf of supporting pro-abortion bills. So she was very pro-abortion and she was mentally disturbed, which I would think you'd have to be if you're going to do things like that and escalate that situation. So no one was hurt, and thankfully there was actually a lot of positive news coverage after that for our vigil, and more people came to the sidewalk, where I thought I was a little afraid that people would not want to come to the sidewalk after that. It emboldened more people to do so. So
That's great. Well, we've had eggs thrown at us, and we've had kamikaze cyclists. Our campaign in Jamaica, they just had their signs ripped up, and all these threats that they've had. And remember, David B. Wright once had a shoe thrown him in Australia.
yes.
So just yesterday at the vigil, there were a couple of people giving aggro. So never a boring place. So, a Molotov
Right.
cocktail from somebody from Wiccan. What was it like being doing cameo for the unplanned film? So you had a special role to play, and so you were an extra in the film.
Yes, that was interesting. You know what, Robert? Do you mind if I go back a little bit before that? You had
Yeah,
asked
yeah,
me how I got involved. I'll
yeah.
I'll build up to that.
Great.
So I first, I guess, had the introduction of what abortion was when I was probably 8 or 9 years old. My grandmother had a bumper sticker on her car that said "Abortion stops a beating heart." And I asked her what that meant, and she explained it to me in an age-appropriate way. And I would say from then on, I was pretty convicted that this was a black and white issue. I couldn't believe that this was something that was legal and that was allowed to happen, that innocent children could be killed that way. I did research on the internet and found out exactly what happens in an abortion. So from then on, I was convicted that I was very pro-life and wanted to stand for the voiceless. I didn't plan on doing that as a lifelong dedication, though. I thought I would just, in my mind, I would always be pro-life. I wrote papers about it in high school. It wasn't until I got to college at Texas A&M where I found out that there were these prayer vigils happening outside of a local abortion facility. And of course, as a freshman, I was very disturbed to find out that there was an abortion facility so close to where I was, where our campus was. And I had never heard about people praying outside of a facility before. I'd never heard of the rescue movement. I had never heard of the March for Life, which is our annual March on Washington. I'd never heard of any of that. So I was invited to come and pray. I was very hesitant and very reluctant, and eventually I did. And eventually I got trained as a sidewalk counselor as well. Also very hesitant to do that because I was afraid. It was a very intimidating thing, and I didn't think I had what it took to talk to women and to get them to change their mind. And so eventually, Sean Carney was our director of our local Brazos Valley Coalition for Life. He insisted that I come work for him. After turning him down a few times, I did. After a series of other things didn't pan out for me, I was very, very reluctant and not knowing that God was calling me to this. And so eventually I did come to work after I graduated college for the Coalition for Life. And I had a very difficult time transitioning from a volunteer to doing this full time. And as you know, Robert, this is a huge, huge spiritual battle. So
Yeah.
I was really sensing the spiritual attacks. And thankfully, I had this wonderful spiritual director who was this Italian sister. She was from an order called the Apostles of the Interior Life. She was so wonderful. She still is wonderful. I just recently saw her again. Her name is Sister Rafaela, and love her so much. And she was so helpful to me through this process. And when I was going through this hardships, my relationships, even with our pro-life friends, were rocky. She insisted that I read a book called Won by Love, WON, Won by Love, which is the story of Norma McCorvey, who is the Jane Roe of Roe versus Wade, which most of you guys know is our United States Supreme Court case that made abortion the law of the land in 1973. So I had no idea who Norma McCorvey was. I didn't know that Norma McCorvey had had a conversion after that court case years later, and had not only converted to being pro-life, but converted to Christ and dedicated her life to Christ. Very, very hard life that she had. So she was the director of an abortion facility. And that just blew my mind that somebody who had gone that far down and was so hateful towards the prayer volunteers that were outside of her facility, but then eventually they pierced her heart, and she was won by love, as the title says. And so what was crazy was 1 month after I finished reading that book, our local abortion director came over to our office, Abby Johnson. And I was in disbelief. I thought, Planned Parenthood's played pranks on us before. Abby has not always treated us well. She has insulted us. She's really gotten in our faces about stuff. She's called me at the office and yelled at me for things like, I don't know that I believe this, even though I had just read a book a month ago about this huge conversion story and this miraculous thing. And here this miraculous thing was happening in front of me, and I was kind of having a doubting Thomas moment. So, of course, I eventually came around. I realized Abby was the real deal. Her conversion was real. We became very close. And then her book, Unplanned, of course, is her story about how she got into Planned Parenthood and then how she got out of Planned Parenthood. And it, of course, chronicles Coalition for Life and 40 Days for Life role in that. Abby had said that if and when they make a movie about her book, she wanted the former workers that had come through her ministry. Of course, she created a ministry to help former abortion workers after she quit Planned Parenthood. She wanted those former workers to play in the movie and to play the prayer volunteers praying outside of her fence. And she wanted her pro-life friends that she had made since she left the facility to play the abortion workers in the movie. So she wanted everybody to kind of do this swap. Now, that didn't exactly happen. However, during the filming of Unplanned, which the filming was in 2018 in Oklahoma, just north of Texas, during that filming, a lot of her former workers and her friends and family got to come to visit the set and meet the directors, the producers, the actors, the lighting people, like everybody that was involved in it. We got to meet a lot of those people. It was really cool. So the directors really wanted to give an opportunity for anybody who wanted to be an extra to do so. And at one point, one of the directors approached me and said, "We have a specific scene we'd like for you to do. Are you interested in doing it?" And I said, "Sure." And he said, "Abby's going to do the scene with you." So what was weird was Abby was going to film as an extra in her own movie. And they said, "But we're going to film this scene twice because if we decide that Abby would be too distracting in the movie, we'll have the other scene with someone else. And I was like, Abby's going to be too distracting. That's going to be very distracting in the movie when people are watching this and they see the real life Abby Johnson. A lot of people are going to know who she is. So we ended up, it was kind of a crazy series of events that happened almost to the point where they were about to film without me because a rumor had spread on the set that I had left town, even though I told them the day before that I was going to be there the next morning ready to go. So that was kind of crazy, and I almost didn't even get to film. Now, it's a very, very, very brief scene. You blink and you miss it. I remember Sean telling me that when he saw the movie, he didn't notice it. Mary Lisa pointed out to him that I was in the scene. So it's one of those things, it was just a blessing to be a part of. But I played in probably about 25 minutes or 30 minutes into the film. There's this tough scene where the director of the clinic is talking to Abby, telling her that she wants her to eventually move up to her role. And she invites her to come into the POC lab, and POC stands for product of conception. So when they pan over in the scene, it shows two techs, lab techs, that are counting baby parts. And so my role was to be one of the techs to pick up the glass in the pass-through door, the pass-through wall, and take it over to the light table and just do that. So I had no words, no lines, nothing like that. It was just that little brief thing. And it was, it was a little weird because I thought, I'm going to call my mom later and tell her that I got to film a scene in a Hollywood movie. Oh, also, what I got to do was really dark. So it was kind of this mixed feeling, right? But it was like, but obviously this is for the purposes of showing what this is and not endorsing it, but exposing it. And so with that, I was very blessed to be a small part of that, but even more so just to see how the film was made and that the makers of the film cared so much about making sure that it was authentic to the truth and making sure Abby approved of all of the scenes and the way that things were. So really cool experience.
That was a powerful moment, the products of conception lab moment, and Abby's in awe of seeing the baby. It's pretty grim. It's pretty macabre, and Abby's boss is the acting is absolutely brilliant. She's a sort of she's a dark sort of person, and it really comes across in the film. But wow, what an incredible film, and what a privilege to be part of it. So even with a small extra role, it's definitely claim to fame for the rest of your life as well. So now things are just unimaginably different in Texas, and you've had that experience of being in charge of a coalition for life as well. What does Texas look like now post Rose? So you've got referral centers. I guess Planned Parenthood are just doing like referrals to other states. And does this mean it's harder to motivate volunteers, or the campaigns are still going? What's the sort of dynamic and how things have changed since then?
It has been tough in ways, yes, to get volunteers, particularly volunteers on the sidewalks outside of our local facilities. So the truth of the matter is it's really not true to say that Texas and several other states are abortion free. Now, it's important that we make the distinction. Obviously, there's a supply of abortion and there's a demand of abortion. So yes, legally, the supply of abortion in Texas has been greatly reduced in terms of surgical procedures. However, of course, the abortion pill has skyrocketed here. So even though Texas has a law in place that makes it illegal to mail abortion pills into the state and out of the state, there's only so much that the state can do to somebody out of the state, and even less so out of the country. For instance, if abortion pills are being mailed to Texas from India, which has been very common. And so there is still a very high demand for abortion, and women are getting abortions in other ways. Yes, it is harder, and yes, there have been lives saved. There have been less abortions in the state of Texas. We can tell this, if nothing else, by looking at the numbers of the birth rate since June of 2022, when the Dobbs decision happened for the United States Supreme Court, and then subsequently Texas passed the Human Life Protection Act, which banned abortions legally. We can see the birth rate has risen. So we know women are choosing life. when they realize that abortion is not as easy of an option, or some of them just because they see it as illegal and then it calls to their mind that this is a moral issue and maybe I shouldn't do this. And so that being said, though, there's this myth that is in a lot of people's minds in Texas. And I've been working very hard the last few years trying to dispel this with people. So it's almost an everyday thing where I'm having conversations with individuals who are mistaken in that all of these abortion facilities, thinking that all of these abortion facilities are closed in Texas. They're not closed. In fact, we did, thank God, in Austin, Texas, where I live, we had one abortion facility that did close right after the Dobbs decision in Texas. Did close in Austin, and we celebrated that. But we have 4 Planned Parenthoods, and we have another independent abortion facility that are all still open. So 2 of those 5 facilities were actually committing abortions. So legally, they're not committing abortions now, but they're still open. They're still selling the product. Women are still coming to them seeking abortion. So what does that mean? It means they're either teaching them, they're showing them how to go across state lines to get abortions in states where the surgical procedure is still legal and the pill is still legal, or they're teaching them how to go to a third-party website to get abortion pills through the mail. And then they tell them, you can come here if you want to for a checkup so we can make sure your abortion is complete. Now, that activity is illegal too, but how do you monitor that? How do you catch them on that? And unless there are authorities in the state that are going to actually go inside and audit these facilities, which is very unlikely, or unless some clients come forward and confess that Planned Parenthood has been doing illegal abortions or in some way assisting in abortions, which is also illegal. They're going to continue to do these things. So I think they're losing money. They're definitely not making as huge of a profit. And it is a mystery to a lot of us as to how they've been able to stay open so long. But there's other ways that they are getting around this. And also they're trying to, of course, beef up their so-called hormone replacement therapy and transgender services as a way to try to make up for the lost profit. So I don't know that that's doing the trick, but bottom line is these facilities are still open in Texas. Not a single Planned Parenthood is closed. A handful of other facilities have closed, independent facilities. And we still desperately need to have volunteers on the sidewalk in Texas, in states like Texas. And we're even hearing from our wonderful friends in states such as Kansas or New Mexico, which is right next to Texas. We're hearing from them that they're seeing a lot more Texas plates. So yes, some women are driving out of state to procure these abortions. And they're even more desperate once they get over there because they've spent time and possibly even money to get there. They're getting a hotel room. And so it's going to be that much harder for the folks that are on the sidewalk in New Mexico and Kansas to convince them not to do this. Now, they may not be paying for any of it because, as you know, there's a lot of abortion scholarships and all these sorts of things out there. But regardless, we're trying to still show them the pain that not only this is going to cause their child by killing their child, but also for them, this lifelong regret that they're likely going to have. So we have a lot of work to do. And I think, sadly, while there's a lot of good pro-life stuff happening in Texas, there's pregnancy centers that are, trying to beef up their services to meet the demand. There's a lot of people that are also asleep at the wheel, thinking that this is just all over and they're not seeing the bigger picture, or they're not kind of on the front lines as much anymore. So we have a lot of work to do to educate people and to get some pro-lifers just woken up again to see the reality and to roll up their sleeves and continue the work to help moms and families in our communities.
Yeah, so the battle continues. I'm very, very much hoping federal defunding of Planned Parenthood happens as well. That would be another huge step. And how on earth they're keeping these places open, like they're just referral centres. But still, there's so much pro-life work to be done. It's not just go home, mission complete, everything over. We could be in a different place in the UK. We've got buffer zones, doing prayer vigils is against the law here, whereas abortion is against the law in Texas. So we are just at a different end of the spectrum in that regard. But tell us everything you know about sidewalk outreach as pavement counselling in the United Kingdom. This has been such a powerful ministry for us, and I think, being in a very liberal country like the United Kingdom, it's like, we've done such a good job that we've been banned. It's like we got to the natural end of the progression when you have a huge amount of liberal politicians. It's just a matter of time before at some point they're going to, if they can ban you, they will. So that's been a sort of a reason we've been so successful here, and that this is why we've been banned. But how successful has sidewalk outreach been in the US, and how prominent is it across the country, and what are the main aspects of it which would be useful for our international leaders?
Yeah, so as we all know, those of us who have been involved for 40 Days for Life, for a short or a long period of time, prayer is our foundation. It really just doesn't make sense to do any of this first and foremost without prayer. And so that is our most powerful weapon to have on the sidewalk. We do see, or on the pavement, as you say, in some places in Europe, we do see an increase, though, in the number of moms choosing life and babies saved when we also have trained pavement counselors outside to reach out and talk to them, because part of the training entails you knowing what the resources available are in your community, the free and reduced cost services that are available to families that are in need. And that I'm not entirely sure if it's how similar it is in Europe and other parts of the world, but I know that in Texas and in the United States, there are so many people that just don't know about these resources in their community. And there's various reasons for that. A lot of it is these are nonprofit organizations, and so they're volunteer run, or they don't have really a budget for marketing. And Planned Parenthood and other, Marie Stopes and other places like that, these abortion giants have lots of money that they shell into marketing. And so it's a misconception to women that they're the only place they can go to for help. So when we're there to be that mouthpiece, in a lot of ways, we're a billboard for these pregnancy centers that are pro-life and these pro-life doctors. We're helping to spread the word about that and give them information. And so it is really powerful. It's very effective. It varies in different places because, as you know, there's a lot of different setups for the facilities. Some of our facilities in the States, we have where we're on the sidewalk right in front of the front door of the facility. Other places, the parking lot is in between us and the door, and the door may be, a lot of yards, meters away, and harder to get someone to talk to us. And then others, even harder than that, there's a parking lot that's behind the building. So the only time we ever see them is when they quickly drive in the driveway and go behind the building, and then we can't see them. They can't hear us. So part of sidewalk outreach or pavement counseling involves what do our signs say? And what we've learned, I think there's been a lot of really great methods that have come forth after a lot of years of experience with 40 Days for Life and other pro-life groups that we partner with or that we work with. And that is what our signs say and how effective they can be. And what we found is that the most effective thing is to not have a sign right at the driveway that says "Pray to end abortion" or "Abortion stops a beating heart." Those are great signs. But having those at a different part of the vigil, and at the moment where a woman walks right by us or drives right by us, we have a sign that offers help. So something that says, "We can help you. Ask me about free pregnancy tests. Ask me about free ultrasounds, or abortion pill reversal." So having those sorts of messages on signs where we're going to be encountering the woman directly, those what we have found have been the most effective things to do. And then, of course, the praying to end abortion or abortion stops a beating heart, those are really good signs to have just in general, as that being at our prayer vigil, that being something that the community sees as they're walking by or driving by. So part of that pavement counseling really involves good signage, of course, professionally made signs, legible so that they can read them clearly when they're driving in or walking in. And then also having a smile and just that loving, tender heart to be empathetic for their situation and really try to meet them where they are. And that is where the gospel really comes to life the most, is Christ shows us how to meet people where they are. You know, the first thing out of Christ's mouth in various parts of the gospel is not necessarily something from scripture. It's not necessarily a message, about faith or a message about following him. It's about meeting their immediate carnal needs, eating and shelter and those sorts of things. And so that's what we want to be able to do, is to first address what their concerns are, because they have to trust us before they care about what we have to say. So that's where the gospel really comes to life, is when we approach them and show them those resources and show them that we really do care about them. So I would highly recommend, if you're not trained in a sidewalk outreach or pavement program, that you do so. And you might be afraid to do it. Most people are. I was, like I said early on, I was very hesitant to get involved with sidewalk outreach because I just didn't think I had what it took. And I was afraid. And I thought, what if I say the wrong thing? And this comes with both experience and prayer. You pray to the Holy Spirit to give you the words to say. But just like if you're going to go and jump out of an airplane, for fun, because I guess some people do that. You're not just going to do that without equipping yourself, right? You're going to have a parachute. You're going to make sure that that parachute is safe and is working properly. And you're going to have all the things in place. Same kind of concept here. You don't just go to the sidewalk without preparing yourself. You learn about the resources. What are the pamphlets that we're handing out? Who are the people that are at these pregnancy centers? We got to get to know them, know what their services are. We have to know what the site of the abortion facility says, the website. What does their website say? What are they saying? If they're saying something about us, what are they saying? We have to really educate ourselves to at least a basic level to be able to effectively, do our outreach. And I will say one really quick story too, a story where I was very humbled for sidewalk outreach. I remember early on in Bryan College Station, when I was a student still, and I was just starting out sidewalk counseling, there was this peer of mine who was a young man who was very, very shy, very what we call socially awkward, hard to kind of carry on a conversation with, very quiet person, very humble, and a huge heart, huge servant's heart. He was always at his church serving in whatever way he could. One day he told me that he was going to get trained as a sidewalk counselor. And in my mind, I was like, I just don't know about that. I don't know that that's going to work for you. You're so awkward. And I just don't think. And I thought, and why is he doing that? He's so nervous and he's so shy. Like, I can't believe he's going to do that. I was so blessed. I just happened to be on the sidewalk with him the very first day that he went out after his training. Yes, he was nervous, but he reached out without hesitation. He just stepped up to the fence and he reached out to the first mother that came in and got out of her car. And he said, "Ma'am, we're here because we love you. We care. We want to offer you resources." And I was so humbled because I thought, this guy is stepping out of his comfort zone, but he is doing it. And of course, like I said, the more experience you have, the more comfortable you're going to get with it. And the more, and maybe not necessarily comfortable, but maybe more confident you're going to get with it. And I was very humbled that day. He was called to it. And even though a lot of people would have thought, like me, maybe would have thought, I don't know that that's the best thing for you, he answered that call and he did it. He stepped out of his comfort zone. So I say that to encourage you, if you're hesitant because you're not sure you're going to be good at it, it does take practice, yes, but if you're truly called to this, do it. Step out in faith and do it, because we have so many people that, sadly go into these abortion facilities that don't have anybody that reach out to them. So be that person that reaches out in love to them and just tries your best to help them find the life-affirming resources that they need.
Well, we just had an incredible story. A lady back 8 years ago in Ealing, she was going for an abortion. She changed her mind and she showed the picture of her 8-year-old child just to the Vigil volunteers just a few days ago. And I've known people who were just, speaking as if the words were coming directly from God, just knew the right thing to say at the right time. just really anointed and blessed. And I mean, just what an incredible ministry it is, reaching out to people at the last moment. You just don't get the our volunteer in Portugal says, you know, if you're not going to be a fireman and you want to save lives, then come join 40 Days for Life. We just had like 30 people in Jamaica do the sidewalk outreach course, and there's going to be more there as well. So it's a great resource.
Praise God.
Anyone listening, just go and have a look at the university on the website. Go and have a look at the sidewalk outreach course. And now it's a lot harder in the UK because we can't legally be close to the abortion centres. Having said that, we've still seen people change their minds even a distance from the abortion clinic. We've had taxi drivers drive people to the pavement counsellors there. So, but you've now got 365 campaigns in the US, so year-round vigils. So what started with 40 days, like a lot of places now have got the ability to be year-round. So how many campaigns are there that do the year-round effort, and how do they do it? Have they got an organisation behind them? They've got a little bit more impetus with the volunteers, and they've just got that sort of scope to do that much more.
Yeah, there are some 365 locations in the US that have an organization, a local organization to back up those efforts. So several of them are run by Right to Life groups, maybe county or state Right to Life groups. For me, of course, with the Coalition for Life, first in Bryan College Station, and then in Austin, we had the Central Texas Coalition for Life, and it's a huge blessing. It's very, very difficult to have a year-round presence without some sort of local ministry to help run it. A lot of our 365 locations are run by folks. I'll give an example. Our wonderful leader of the year a couple of years ago, Rich Owens in Sarasota, Florida. He's retired. He's dedicated his retirement to doing this, right? So it really does take a lot. And it makes sense that you're either retired or have an organization. It doesn't mean that you have to do it that way. There are some people that are doing this somehow and also homeschooling their kids, or, you know, have a full-time job outside of the house, whatever that may be. So, but yeah, there's a good number of them that have local organizations that are backing them up, and it's great to have that support. Currently, I believe we have 60 365 locations, so 60 in the US and Canada, which is great. It means that in addition to the spring and the fall 40 Days for Life vigils, they are doing a year-round presence, which is a minimum of about 1 day or so a week. And they start out with covering 1 day a week with the goal of reaching all the business hours of their local facility. So they may start out by covering the 1 abortion day or the 3 abortion days and the mornings that they have, whatever it may be, and they build up continuously from there. So the spring and the fall can be a springboard for or y'all call it autumn, the spring and the autumn, maybe a springboard for, you know, launching a year-round program for 40 Days for Life 365. So we're really blessed to have the ones that we do. They are growing in number, and we hope to continue to grow those 365 locations because, as you know, the more days that you have covered, that means more prayer volunteers. That means more outreach and witness to moms. That means more lives saved. So it's this domino effect. And also, hopefully, more abortion workers quitting and more abortion facilities closing. So there definitely is that domino effect of having those advanced saves and wonderful things that we witness on the sidewalks.
Oh, it's incredible. So, yeah, I mean, naturally, we've got really good leaders in the UK, and things have naturally developed. Either they've seen the abortion clinic close or something major's happened. Some of the abortion centres in London, they've got 50, 100 abortion appointments a day, and they're walking in. So it just means there's been an incredible opportunity to do pavement counselling really well. And the trained people, training's not difficult. Anybody can do it. You need to step out your comfort zone. It is a beautiful ministry. You can save lives on a daily basis. The graceful conversations. You're going to get a pasting. You're going to get people that don't like you, but you've got to have a thick skin and just embrace that as well. You were the executive director for the Austin Coalition for Life. So what was that like? Austin's a liberal city, as we know, and you've had the Molotov cocktail treatment, so you could probably endure anything after having that kind of attack. But what was it like being in charge of a local is it right to say Crisis Pregnancy Centre, the Coalition for Life, you did all sorts of pro-life activities. So what was it like?
Yeah, quite frankly, it was very difficult, especially in the beginning. I did not move from Bryan College Station to Austin, which is just about 2 hours away. I didn't move to Austin thinking that I was going to be the executive director of the organization. I moved there just thinking I was going to be a staff member, helping to coordinate the year-round vigils that we were doing there. A series of things happened. I ended up being the director. It was nerve-wracking. It was difficult. There was just a lot on my plate, and the major thing that made it difficult was I came from the Brazos Valley Coalition for Life in College Station, where we had four staff members and one abortion facility. It was completely flipped when I went to Austin. I was the only staff member. I ended up being the only staff member for many years, and we had four abortion facilities. And we wanted to cover all of them. We hated that there was, so many times and so many hours of empty sidewalks at these local facilities. So we only had the ability to cover two of them. And even then, that was a struggle over the years. So it was difficult, but I will say there is a reason why God did not reveal to me ahead of time that that was going to be the role I was going to be serving in, because I never would have moved there had I known that. And so it's clear that God knows what he's doing. And I am grateful. I'm so grateful for the experience. I'm grateful that I had to be thrust into that position where I felt completely undeserved and unprepared and all sorts of just not knowing what I was doing and having to figure that out. But really having the love and support of so many people in the community who really wanted to see the organization grow and thrive and see babies saved and see these abortion facilities closed. So a lot of struggles, burning the candle at both ends often. It was so worth it though, because the Coalition for Life here, we've seen over 300 moms and babies that have been saved over the years. Praise the Lord. And we've seen, I believe the number is now 15 abortion workers that have quit in Austin and had conversions. There may be more that have quit, but we know of 15 that quit because they, in moral and good conscience, couldn't work there anymore. And we're blessed to know and have a relationship with some of those former workers still. So all of it was very worth it. And if you are in a situation where you're thinking about maybe being invited to run an organization or run a 40 Days for Life vigil and you just don't know if you can do it, pray, and ask for help. You don't need to do it on your own. You really should ask for help as much as you can and be very specific in your invitation to people. I need someone to call these places to help coordinate events. I need someone to go down the list of volunteers and call them to come to the sidewalk and then make sure that they know of their prayer hour every week. Very specific assignments, but build up your leadership team and tell people you need help, and even with something very specific like that, so that you don't feel like it's all on your shoulders, because that can be difficult and you can get burnout. You can get ministry burnout from that. So pray a lot, and make sure that you're always giving it back to the Lord and continuing to ask folks for help. But very grateful for my time as the director. I hadn't actually planned on stepping away from that role, but Sean and a few others had invited me to come and work for their ministry, and that kind of got the ball rolling and discerning to come to back to the national organization, because like you said, the Brazos Valley Coalition for Life and 40 Days for Life merged eventually when our local Planned Parenthood closed there. So very blessed to be back working with Sean again and some of the team that have been here for many years, and it's been awesome.
That's great. And so did you manage to cover the 4 places in Austin with prayer, or did you focus on just one or two, or how did you work that?
We had to focus on 2 of them at a time. We had a very brief time, actually, right around the time of the Molotov cocktail 10 years ago, where we only had one facility that was open. The other ones had temporarily closed because of some legislation that was going back and forth or they at least, if they didn't close, they had stopped doing abortions. So for a small period of time, for about 3 or 4 weeks, we did have just one facility we focused on. But the most we could ever focus on full time was 2 locations. And that's pretty much still the case right now, especially as volunteers have fallen off in the last couple of years because they think that, there's not anything happening anymore, and there still is. So it has been a struggle, but we have gone to all 4 of the places at different times. So they know that we're there. They know that, at any point we can show up and talk to people. And so there's usually some fruits that we see each time we go to these places because they don't expect that we're going to be there now that abortion is not legal in Texas. And it's funny because then they tell us like, it's illegal. Why are you still here? And it's like, why we're still here. We know what you're still doing inside those facilities. We know you're still selling the product. We're not stupid. Like our goal is to see you closed. And so you can try to convince us to leave like you're not doing anything shady anymore. And we know better than that. So.
And Texas is a conservative state, and Austin's, a liberal capital, so it's sort of it's kind of out of sync with the rest of the state. But I guess that's the nature of a lot of some American large cities are more likely to be liberal. So if you looking at the international side, some of the countries abortion's illegal. How would you adapt 40 Days for Life for an international audience? So some countries are really different, like Africa. Very pro-life, very undeveloped pro-life ministry there. India, huge number of abortions, sex-selected abortions. Really difficult to have a public presence in some of these places. And we just got a new campaign in the Philippines, largest Christian nation in Asia. Huge potential there, but again, abortion is illegal. No presence. Without changing the mission or mission drift or anything like that. How would you present 40 Days for Life to an international audience? And especially, like Jamaica, Africa, Philippines, abortion's illegal. So it's like, where do we start? The prayer vigil, people are kind of like, well, this isn't outside an abortion center. We're standing in public. What are we doing? So our campaign in Warsaw in Poland, they've just had their first ever abortion center open last weekend. So, which is, terrible for Poland. They're, seems to be breaking the law, or there's a loophole, but they do have a focal point to have a prayer vigil now, which will give their vigil a lot more purpose. So how would you bring the message across to countries where have very different abortion laws?
Yeah, I would say just like what we're facing in Texas, just because something is illegal doesn't mean there's not a demand for it. And I think you would agree, Robert, and all of us on the International 40 Days for Life team would say our goal is not to make abortion illegal wherever we are. We're not a political organization. Our goal is to make it unthinkable. Abortion is very much on the people's minds in most of these countries, and there's various reasons for that. There's a lot of such as a lot of our wonderful pro-life friends who work at the UN and in some of these other bigger places like this, where they're seeing this colonialism, this group of elitists in the world, these world leaders trying to force abortions on various countries and various communities where some of these people do not want it. I'm sure you're familiar. I think she lives in the UK now. Uju Ikenocha, I believe is her name. She's got a lot of great testimony where she says that she's originally from Africa, of course, and she's said that there's many cultures and subcultures and villages within these countries where they don't even have a word for abortion because that's so out of the realm of their thinking, right? And yet these elitists, these world leaders are trying to force this, not just encourage them, but actually bribe them and blackmail them into doing abortions, performing abortions, as if this somehow is going to liberate women and families in these communities. And we know that that's a lie. So we need to, as the pro-life movement, wherever you are, we need to be proactive and not wait for that to happen, but take a stand publicly that this is not going to be welcome if this ever happens, or if our government is allowing abortion facilities to be open and performing abortions, even though on the books, it's illegal. We need to take a public stand for that. So that's going to look different in different countries, of course, because of whatever your laws may be for public demonstrations. And of course, countries such as India, where Christians are heavily persecuted for, publicly displaying their faith at all, there's going to be various challenges. So we've got to do what we can to promote our work within our own communities as best we can, promote this life affirming message that all life is valuable and sacred. We cannot, again, wait until abortions are in our backyard. We've got to start with our family. It always, like Mother Teresa and many wonderful religious leaders have said, it starts in the home. So, what are we teaching our young children? We need to be teaching them from the earliest stages that all life is sacred, that every human life has value, and really instill those values in them so that they don't grow up to then be complacent with abortion in their communities, but they see it as for what it is, as a grotesque and a grave evil that's put upon unborn children and women and families. So be proactive, start with a prayer vigil. Maybe it starts in your home where you're praying for pro-life efforts and praying against any abortion legislation or abortion elitists that come into the community trying to force this on the communities. Pray against that and have any sort of, if you have churches that you're able to worship at, have those awareness campaigns starting with your churches. Knowing that, this abortion legislation or these abortion ideologies are eventually going to come to and be formalized in our communities. So yeah, without, of course, knowing each individual community and talking about a worldwide perspective, a broad perspective, make sure that you are in prayer about this and educating yourself and educating the people around you, starting with that. And then any time that you hear, such as our wonderful folks in Jamaica, when you hear about abortions happening, even when it's illegal, take a stand. If you're able to go there and pray, go there and pray and take a stand and try to find resources for women in your community. And if there are not resources, spread the word about that to the faith community and look at starting something to have a safe place for women to come to and for families to come to.
It's been really beautiful seeing just a couple of countries where abortion's illegal, like Poland. We've been there a couple of years ago, and we spread all the kind of seeds of the mission, the ministry, and they made a slow start, but now these seeds are really germinating and just flowering into a really beautiful mission there. And like Poland is a very conservative country compared to the rest of Europe.
Yeah,
largely illegal there, so. But still, there's a huge opportunity there, and I think we will have a nationwide campaign there in God's timing. And the same in the Philippines. Abortion's illegal. They had divorce illegal there just recently, and we did a mission trip there a couple of years ago. But now that's really blossoming, and the sisters had a launch event, 500 people in a school, and they're really good at the community outreach and just getting out there with the community outreach. That's the best thing that we can do is take a pro-life message to the streets. Pray in public, and we just had somebody register from Malawi, the first time campaign. He runs his own ministry. Get one good person, you can recruit the whole country. So just sometimes out of nowhere, somebody amazing comes along and really talented and often post-abortive men and women also just really got the power and the passion. So things are changing a lot in Europe. We've just had this JD Vance speech. And it's been blown us away, really, because having the national government ban prayer vigils outside abortion centres. It's quite hard to answer back to that when the government comes and gives you a ban on the national level, on the level of thought. But then along came JD Vance on a conference that was supposed to be on European security, and he showcased one of our leaders, Alex, to 4 minutes lambasting all the European leaders. So above our government, there's another level of and it's just got international media coverage. So we're just blown away with what's happened there. And it's galvanized a huge international debate, not just in the UK, but internationally as well. Even Trump meeting Starmer the other day, they were talking about free speech and free speech again.
Wow.
This issue is just going to come back again and again. So the more we get persecuted, the more these things flip. And, the rug can be pulled from under the abortionist's feet, at a moment's notice, and suddenly it's a huge topic, and they're being held accountable. So seeing what's happened in Texas gives us a huge amount of hope here, and people. We're often asked by pro-abort journalists, are you emboldened by Vance or what's happening in America? But it does give us a lot of confidence. At the same time, there's a huge amount of work to do here, and the hearts are very hard. And very much the relationship's changing between Europe and the US. It's like, America's becoming quite different under Trump, I think. And so where there's going to be tariffs maybe in the future, it might be America's more isolationist in perspective. Is that what you think? You see things going from the American perspective? Or I guess, what's your perspective of the relationship between Europe and America and how that's changing at the moment?
It's weird to me, Robert, because it seems like there's a lot of different dynamics depending on which European country you're talking about. So, for instance, one thing that we've been saying in the US a lot, especially when it comes to testifying for various hearings and legislation in different states in the United States, people will say, we are ranked among the worst countries, right up there with China. That European countries don't even have abortion laws this loose and this, cruel. And for so many countries, and of course, I don't know all the laws with all the countries in Europe, and I know that several of them, there's an abortion ban after 12 weeks. And yet we've got states like Colorado in the United States and New Mexico where they have zero restrictions that you can abort up to the day of birth for any reason, no matter what. Doesn't have to be so-called health of the mother, doesn't have to be life of the mother, doesn't have to be that the baby has a disability. It could be you just don't feel like being a mother. Your due date is tomorrow. I want an abortion today. It's pretty extreme. I mean, all abortion is extreme, right? But it's even more so with where most people kind of see like, wait a minute, by the third trimester, there's a baby here. Most people see that even if they don't see that within, with the first trimester and the second trimester. But you have that. But then you have countries like Ireland where they just legalized abortion, within the last few years. I know that several of our folks and friends, such as I think Sean and Abby, were both there trying to rally the troops and prevent that from happening. And that's really sad because Ireland is traditionally known to be such a Catholic, strong Catholic country, and yet things like this are happening. And then you look at countries like Germany. I was blessed to actually almost exactly 10 years ago, I visited Germany and Spain with Abby Johnson, and she gave this speech in Germany to probably 200 people in the room. You could hear a pin drop, and she pointed out the elephant in the room that a lot of Germans don't want to talk about, which is this is the place where the Holocaust was the biggest, this is what happened from Hitler's reign. And we had these concentration camps and we dehumanized whole segments of our population. And here we are just a few short years, 70, 80 years later, and we're doing that all over again? Really? And it's like, man, the leaders that were there that were hosting, they were like, we are so glad you said that, because it needs to be said. But people don't want to talk about it. It's the elephant in the room they don't want to talk about. So, who's leading who here? If the United States has overturned Roe versus Wade, yet now we have various states that sadly are worse off, and then other states, of course, legally that are better off. What's happening here? So I think I don't know that it's necessarily the countries that are going to be leading the way, or even states like Texas that are going to be leading the way. I would like for us to. But again, this is more than just about the laws. This is about changing the hearts and minds of people. So I think it's Christians. It's Christians who are going to be leading that change wherever we are in the world and showing people the truth about abortion, what it does to children, what it does to women and families, and how it helps to break down our culture even more, and causes all kinds of other problems that we're seeing in our societies. So I hope that, and I'm grateful that various countries across the world, including European countries, have started 40 Days for Life vigils, have seen, the lead that America has taken, that the United States has taken in terms of these public witnesses and these prayer vigils. And I hope that we can together work together and continue to spread those messages and help other countries in other parts of the world, encourage them to start these prayer vigils because, again, it's going to be the faithful that are leading the charge and showing the world what true love really is.
Oh, we've got a lot of work to do in Europe and certainly catching up, but it's nice to see America's, 10 years plus ahead. And so there is a pathway of hope and the pathway of, of things really changing beyond our imagination. So where do you see the pro-life movement in 10 years' time in America? Is the things just naturally, my experience is things naturally just go out to the extreme, either the abortion law becomes up to birth, decriminalization happens as proposed in the UK, or like the US, completely pro-life and, different states going in different places. How do you see things developing in the next 10 years?
I do think that one thing that will be better in 10 years in the United States is we will have far more pregnancy centers than we do now that are also turning into medical, advanced medical facilities. So, in states like California, each pregnancy center there is actually required by state law to have a medical license, which that was meant to deter the pregnancy centers, but to me that was a great thing. That was a very pro-life thing for the legislature to do, even though they didn't mean for that outcome. So every pregnancy center has a medical aspect in California. I think that those pregnancy centers who are seeing the need that they need to offer, a full spectrum of women's health care, that they're going to be heading that way. Not all pregnancy centers, but I think a lot more of them are. And we are seeing an increase in that, even in ones in Texas, as well as other parts of the country, where they see that there's a greater need and they need to address this. Now, we do have a lot of federally qualified community health care centers, but they can only do so much, especially if the federal government's going to continue to fund Planned Parenthood. Sadly, ridiculously. Let's hope in 10 years that's not the case anymore, but that may change with each administration. But regardless, I think the pro-life movement and the people of faith see that we can't rely on the government to serve and help and protect people. We've got to be people of faith standing up and starting our own places of healthcare centers and pregnancy centers in order to really give them the full amount of care that they need and make sure that they have less and less reasons to want to get an abortion. So I see our pregnancy centers expanding and advancing. That's one good thing. I do see more states, possibly even Missouri. Like Missouri, the state of Missouri just passed an amendment, a state constitution amendment, sadly, to make abortion legal permanently there. But we know that a lot of these petitions that were going around, the abortion industry is funding a lot of this, and they're misrepresenting what actually the law is, and it's not an accurate representation of what the people want in those states. So I do see some action such as that happening, where the pro-lifers come back and have better marketing, campaigns for these petitions and for these amendments and those sorts of things. Is that all going to happen in 10 years? I mean, who knows? We don't know if abortion is going to be unthinkable in our lifetime, but I do think it continues to be more unthinkable as Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry is exposed. What's fantastic, and in our United States podcast just came out with an episode about this. There was a New York Times article, of all things, exposing Planned Parenthood and saying things that the pro-life movement here has been saying for years about their unsanitized unsterilized instruments and unsanitary conditions and poor morale and all these workers handing out expired medications and overdosing, all these really horrible things. We've known. The shock wasn't that. The shock was the New York Times was exposing this. And so it's like, yeah, we've been saying that forever and we've had the proof. Maybe more people will listen to us now that bigger media outlets that are more pro-abortion are admitting this. So we've got a lot of work to do. And quite frankly, the pro-life movement, we have a lot of great qualities and we work together in a lot of ways, and we're broken in a lot of ways. And so we're going to continue to work through those things. And I look at this as the time after we ended slavery in the United States. Things weren't perfect after that. They were really rocky and really just people, the abolitionists were figuring out how to go from here and how to make these conditions better for those who were slaves and former slaves. And I think we are working through a lot of these things now. I think a lot of people just didn't expect what's happening now in some places to happen, such as these really extreme advanced pro-abortion laws. So we've got to, yes, making abortion illegal is important, but making it unthinkable is even more important.
Well, I very much hope that we see defunding before 10 years' time. So fingers crossed next 4 years. So lastly,
please, Lord.
What message do you have for our international leaders?
I want to say thank you. First of all, I can't imagine what it would be like to be looking at a country across the other side of the world and seeing what's going on there and then saying, I'm going to take what they're doing over there and I'm going to make it happen here, even though my situation might be very different in my country or my community. So thank you for that. Thank you for stepping up and being brave and saying yes to the Lord. And I would say, please keep educating yourselves again about what's available in your community. Keep in touch with the other leaders in your country and on your continent. If you don't have any other leaders in your country, Robert is such an amazing resource, and Tomislav and all of those, our Latin American leaders, of course, so amazing, so brave, so faithful. So please keep going, keep at it. If you are starting to experience burnout, seek help, seek a spiritual director, seek help from a trusted minister in your life or somebody, and always you can lean on us as the international team. We've all been there. We've been the leaders. Sean's been a leader of a local campaign. Robert's been leading for many years. Steve has. I have. We know what you're going through, or at least we have a good idea of what you're going through. So I know it can sometimes feel like you're on an island, especially if geographically you are very far away from other 40 Days for Life vigils or pro-life people, but know that we're a phone call or an email away. And you utilize those relationships, build those relationships, because you're not alone. We don't want you to feel like you're alone. We want you to know that you have our support. And without you being on the ground there, we wouldn't know what's going on. And the women in your community may not have help and resources available, and the men may not have resources and help available. So keep going and pray through the hardships and keep asking for help. And again, talk to us. We love hearing from you. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for giving of your time and your talents and your treasure to serve the Lord in this amazing way.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Heather. It's been a real privilege speaking with you today, and learned a huge amount, and there's a lot going on. So it's a really exciting time for our ministry as well. And the international side, we still could double, triple in the next few years. Things are growing a lot. We've got podcasts, we've got news, we've got stories. There's so many different countries. We've got 25 countries that I'm dealing with. Lourdes has similar number as well, just about 20 countries. And there's a lot more growth to come. So, it's what's happened in the United States is super inspiring. It's been great hearing about you being part of Unplanned, running the Austin Coalition for Life, and keep up the amazing work. You're an inspiration to us, and may we continue. For our listeners, please go to 40daysforlifeinternational.com. There you'll see the news, the podcast that we do, all the other resources as well as we spread this mission internationally. And please pray for our mission, pray for an end to abortion where you live, and get out and discern leading a campaign or being a volunteer. So Heather, thank you so much for your time. It's been wonderful speaking with you. Thank you so much to our listeners. May God bless you, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you. God bless you.
No te pierdas los podcasts de 40 días por la vida internacional con entrevistas, reportajes y testimonios de todo el mundo.
Don't miss our podcasts with interviews, news, and reports from around the world.